The next thing that you're going to see is actually a taped presentation from Bill Taylor. As I said, he's the retired chief from Lowell, Massachusetts. Those of you that know him, several of you do, know that he had a distinguished career in Lowell, Massachusetts. And I think if we did a genealogy of where the good ideas in policing emanated from in this country, especially around community policing and problem-oriented policing, there would be a direct stream back up to Lowell, Massachusetts, going back probably 20, 25 years. And so Bill has been one of the police leaders from that section of the country that has benefited from and has gone on to help others benefit from his experience in SPI. So I'm immensely proud to have him speaking to us today. Again, I think Billy Taylor in Lowell, Massachusetts are very good examples, not just of the impact that SPI can have on a police organization and its community, but how it can be impactful and helpful to an emerging police leader. I think you'll see this in Billy's comments.
My name is Bill Taylor. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be here today to give you the highlights of the SPI program, both for the Lowell Police Department, the city of Lowell, Massachusetts, and then me personally and professionally. I think it's kind of descriptive if I go through it. I'm going to explain a little bit about myself, the community I worked in, the police department, and then I'll go through each one of the grant applications that we were successfully able to receive briefly and kind of tie it into what I think SPI was able to give to the city and to me personally. So I have 37 years as a police officer in the city of Lowell, Massachusetts, all with the same department, literally came up through the ranks, 11 years as a narcotics detective. Then I went on to be involved in a supervision of a community policing program in the city. And then went back and ran some investigative units in the community in the police department. Then probably in 1999, I went to become involved in the administration of the department, very much as a chief of staff of the superintendent at the time. And in 2008, 2009, in that general area, I went back to be a sector commander of one of the community policing sectors in the city. That coincides with the first SPI grant award, and I'll talk about that briefly. And then in 2013, I was fortunate enough to be selected as the superintendent of the Lowell Police Department. That's the chief in our community. And I'll talk about my two final SPI involvements as chief. A little bit about the city and the police department. Lowell is a city, very tightly congested urban environment, about 25 miles northwest of Boston. It's one of the original industrial cities in the United States. It literally was carved out of other towns at the time. And Lowell had the distinction of being at the confluence of two rivers, and that's why in the 1820s, Lowell actually came to be as the first industrial plant city in the United States. And so that was really Lowell's history well into the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century. And, you know, it prospered. It was a textile mill city. And then by the 1960s, 1970s, it saw a significant change over time. All the textile mills essentially moved out to other areas, mostly in the southern part of the United States. And so it experienced a significant decline. And that coincided with a significant increase in crime. It's a very diverse community. Currently, it is home to the second largest concentration of Southeast Asian residents, particularly Cambodian residents in the United States. About a third of its population is Southeast Asia, mostly Cambodian. The other community that has a higher percentage of Cambodian residents would be, I believe, Long Beach, California. In addition to that, the diversity is a very large Hispanic population, mostly Puerto Rican and Dominican immigrants into the community. And then it has a core base of families that are very much a mix. So it's a small city. It's about 14 square miles total, and the current population is somewhere a little bit over 115,000 people. The crime in the community is all concentrated in its core center, and that's really relates to the housing stock in the community. As you can imagine, those old mill cities like Lowell, most of the housing was originally right in that core center of the city so that people could walk to the mills. That became a very ample housing for new immigrants coming into the community. It's very much a gateway community. And so that's really where most of the current crime is associated. By the time the police department applied for its first SPI grant, we had a long history of community policing. When I say long, we went down that road about 1993. We had a new superintendent. Some of you might know him, Ed Davis. He went on to be the police commissioner in Boston. He really instituted community policing in 1993. And we had extremely successful run in community policing from 93 to the early 2000s. We were able to reduce pot warrant crimes in the city by 60%. We did that by increasing staffing, increasing collaboration, community policing efforts, really kind of transformed the organization over that time. The history is such, and in my professional opinion here, there's a very much a connection between economic fortune of a community and to some extent its crime trends. And as inevitably happens, in 2008, there was a significant economic downturn. Our crime, especially our property-related crime, which was, we had data to support that it was all driven by, largely by drug-addicted individuals who were supporting the habits. So by 2008, 2009, crime went up significantly. There was a 15% increase in all property crimes, 14% specifically burglary, and 21% increase in all kinds of larcenies. And again, we used public health data in 2008 to make that correlation between overdose victims and property crime that they potentially were responsible for. So we were able to correlate the two, property crime with data back to addiction from street crime. Also at that time in 2008, 2009, because of the economic realities of the situation and the reduction in the police department budget, we saw a decrease in personnel, both civilian and sworn personnel. That caused inevitably a rollback or a reduction in our proactive policing activity and our community collaboration in the neighborhoods with our various stakeholders and partners in the community. So that's obviously a very bad trend. So that kind of brings us to the point where the Lowell Police Department got involved with the SPI program. I was very fortunate as a captain at the time, running one of the sectors of the city, to have a front row seat to the initial introduction of the SPI program back in 2010. 2010, 2011 was our initial award for funding. And I can tell you the experience with the SPI program was exceptional. And for you, communities and departments that are new to this program, it's a great ride. You're going to very much enjoy it. And I think that you should strap yourself in because the benefits far exceed the work that you'll have to put in, but you will have to work very hard at this. I think the key point to bring out about the SPI program is that it's not a top-down directive. It's not initiated from the top telling police departments and organizations what they should do. It's very much driven from the bottom up. And I think that is really one of the core strengths of the program, such that communities, police departments get the opportunity to come to SPI with innovation and with programs that they would like to explore and that they think can help their communities. And SPI provides not only the funding, but also the support and the training and technical assistance. And really what the other thing that I've noticed over the years is it's a catalyst. It's a realization that you have to persevere and you push forward with it. And the other key components to it is data and evidence-based practices. It's incumbent upon any organization that's involved in this to come with the innovation based on solid data and evidence. And another key thing is collaboration with research institutions. Each one of our 4 awards for the SPI program were instrumentally involved with a research partner. We were fortunate enough to use the same core research partner for all 4. We brought other people in depending on the particular applications that we were involved in, but that's key. And then the other one, the final thing I'll mention about the SPI program, the core highlights of it, is continuity and its ability to build in the ability to move forward, and I think that's key. So as I said, the final key concept is sustainability, and we built that into each one of the programs that we were involved in right at the beginning. And the other thing that I will mention about the SPI program is the relationships that you build, not only with BJA, the TTA, and the subject matter experts that provide the TTA, also the community members, and it really causes you to focus on what you're doing. The monthly calls with the team approach, with all the people that I mentioned and your research partners, I think were key to driving us forward and making each one of our programs successful. In each one of the ones I'm going to discuss briefly, we developed the concepts. We went to BJA as a awardee for the SPI program. They provided the leadership, in some cases, the funding, the subject matter experts, the TTA, combined with the research, and then we were able to move forward. The first one we were involved in was 2010. It was a result of a significant increase, as I stated, in property crime in the city. And we developed the idea to focus on property crime, specifically reducing drug-related property crime in specific targeted areas, and then also working on offender-based programs. And the way that this particular program worked was we used data and analysis to identify a significant number of hotspots around the city. They were principally located around the core part of the city. We developed an intervention strategy that was twofold. One of them was location-based strategies, interventions. A lot of it was hotspot policing. It was also foot and bicycle patrols. It was collaboration with the community by doing kind of a unique concept at the time. We used these street corner meetings to try and engage with the community to help the police department make the community safer. And the basic concept was that if somebody in the community, in the neighborhood, could see the meeting, that they were much more likely to come out of their house or their apartment and engage with us and be part of a potential solution moving forward, give us what they wanted in their neighborhood for a crime solution. And very often those meetings generated responses that we didn't anticipate. We thought the problem was potentially, prostitution, let's say street level prostitution or drug-related crime. And sometimes the community was more focused on traffic issues or parking disruptions in a very congested neighborhood. And so we developed those street corner meetings. I think were very beneficial. We did a lot of work on a weekly basis between the commanding officers in those sectors that were identified in those hotspots and crime analysis. So we had those weekly collaboration, and we focused certain interventions in those hotspots to try and see if we could positively affect it. Every one of those applications, of those interventions, used the SARA model and problem-oriented policing. Again, going back to that data and evidence-based practices. In that particular program, it was very successful. All the hotspot policing applications and the location-based interventions that we used, when we went back and looked at it, analyzed the data with our research partners over time, each one of the hotspots saw a significant reduction in criminal activity. I happen to be, as I said, I happen to be the commanding officer of what was arguably the most highly, the sector with the highest crime rate and the biggest systemic problem in the neighborhood. And we saw in 1 year a 16% reduction in overall crime, and even larger drops in violent crime in those particular hotspot areas. So I was instantaneously sold on its success, so to speak. The offender-based strategy was not as successful, although it was even more innovative. We identified individuals using data from the city's public health department to correlate fatal overdoses of individuals to those individuals' criminal record and their involvement with property crime. And so we had data component that clearly indicated to us that a lot of the property crime in those geographic areas was driven by drug addiction and the efforts of the individuals to get drugs. And so what we tried to do was we developed a program where we would identify these core individuals. We started with a group of, I believe it was 35, and it expanded from there. Those individuals were approached. We did home visits. We asked them to become involved in the program. And then what we did was we offered them treatment. We offered them certain, what you would categorize now as traditional reentry services to get them to be, productive members of the community. At the same time, clearly letting them know that we knew who they were and we knew that their pattern of behavior and what they were involved in, and if they were not successful in their recovery efforts, as we were willing to help them with, that we would know who to prosecute and we would literally go after them, so to speak, in terms of their criminal activity. What we found in that particular offender-based program was the recidivism rate was very high. 61% of the individuals very quickly revolved back into criminal activity. So a couple of the key things on the hotspots I'll just mention was we targeted prostitution, we used street corner meetings, we also used DDACs, traffic enforcement, foot and bicycle controls. And again, going back to that use of data and crime analysis was a key component of that on those weekly meetings with the sector commanders to try and identify strategies in those geographic areas. The offender-based strategy was mostly run out of one of our detective units at the time. And we did have a partner in that to help with the recovery efforts. So I think what the impact of the SPI program right off the bat in that first application that we had in that was it increased our ability to use data and focused our attentions really on the correlation of evidence-based data programs and applications and interventions into a particular crime situation. I think that is really key. We tried to use, at the time, cutting edge technology. Now, 10 years later, it seems kind of not very cutting edge, I guess you'd say. But the other thing too is, and I think this is kind of really important for an organization. It got us to think outside the box as an organization very quickly. What can we do and how can we measure it in terms of our research component to see if we're being successful in addressing crime? SPI program supported us with training and technical assistance was key. They, from a police perspective, they both held our hand and held our feet to the fire, so to speak. So we were provided all the assistance they could in training and technical assistance. But they, along with our research partners, also on those monthly calls, made sure that we were focused and clear of our objectives and constant analysis of some of the data as we move forward. And I think that was key, because sometimes organizations, especially police organizations, we tend to kind of lose interest if it's not successful. The second one, the SPI2, was really a continuation of that. There was a realization of a couple of things at the end of SPI1 that we needed really live. First of all, the first key thing is that the offender-based program, even as innovative as it was less successful than the geographic-based interventions. The second thing was we identified that we needed near live data analysis between crime analysis and collaboration with the patrol units to really address these issues. And that we get into in SPI3. But the other thing was we knew that the other component of it, which is really SPI2, is training. We knew that we clearly identified we needed to do more problem-oriented policing, focusing on the SARA unit and focusing on SARA and problem-oriented policing with a particular fit into a particular neighborhood and geographic area. So what we did was SPI2, we focused on training in our regional police academy that we ran for a lot of departments just outside of Boston. And we focused on training those individuals moving forward. And that really the focus on that was sustainability, because we wanted to make sure that we could sustain these efforts moving forward. And one of the clear ways you do that is incorporating it directly into your training program with new recruits moving forward. And so that was SPI2. So it was successful. The first two were very successful. Now we get to 2013, 14. I am fortunate enough to become chief. I have that reservoir of involvement and appreciation for what SPI can bring to an organization and to a community as you move forward. But as I indicated in my previous comments, by the time I became chief, the department had seen a significant reduction in budgets, personnel, and also our collaboration with the neighborhoods and our proactive community policing and proactive crime strategies had taken a significant hit as a result of the economic downturn and the subsequent reduction in budgets and people. So I came in as a new chief, and I knew that what I was charged with doing was doing more with less. And the only way that I could do with that was a strategic department-wide reorganization. But I wanted to do it in such a way that it focused on some of the core concepts of really that SPI had been promoting all along. We had the rising crime rates. We had the rollback of the community engagement efforts. So my reorganization at the time was focused on getting back into the community, taking a dedicated group of officers that I happen to call district response officers, putting them as problem-solving teams into those sectors and combining them with a decentralized crime analysis unit. And my idea, along with my command staff, we worked as a team, was to make this a group of crime fighting and problem solving group that would work remotely off-site into these substations, and they would literally focus day to day on data that would come in and work as a team to try and identify strategies and to implement into those neighborhoods. I think another key component of that was to increase the supervision in the organization. That was a key component of the reorganization. We had a couple of unfortunate incidents. And then the other thing that we did with this particular grant application, again, keep going back to those core concepts of SPI, research partner, but also data. And what we did was we developed a program called Case of Place, where we measured these problem-solving techniques and the impact that they were having, this decentralized crime analysis into the sectors to work on these issues. So we needed a mechanism to measure that and see if it was successful. And what we did was we used Case of Place. The other key component to that is this process evolved forward. We used Case of Place to really restructure our biweekly ComStat meeting. And so traditionally over the course of, a couple of decades now of using ComStat, it had always been the most horrific or the most challenging crime of the day that got the top billing at ComStat, whatever it was, particular homicide or a series of events. We restructured that so that the Case of Place component of ComStat was first and foremost. We wanted to make sure that the people knew that this was, what was primarily going to drive crime in reduction efforts in the community was the idea that you identify these problem locations in a team effort in collaboration with all of our community partners, and that you try and focus on that, and you want to make that the most significant thing, because if we address the small issues before they get to be larger issues, we will have over time, obviously, much more impactful reduction in crime and a better efforts in the community. And so that's really was the basis of the SPI 3 program, was the reorganization, the decentralization of crime analysis, and the use of Case of Place in the ComStat process. We wanted to reverse those prior trends and increase our communication and coordination with our problem solving between crime analysis and the patrol units. We wanted to institutionalize problem solving techniques and the community policing, and reduce property crime. That's always the key, right? That we were trying to focus on. So with respect to Case of Place, one thing I'll mention is they were trained using subject matter experts that SPI helped us with to identify product problems. Anybody could bring a objective or a case to the Case of Place, and then they would strategize as a team to try and identify the interventions that would work. In the first evaluation period, we had 81 cases, and almost all of them had positive impacts. The interventions were tracked daily, and the results were measured on all of these cases that were identified in these problem-solving teams until the cases were ultimately closed, and we moved forward. As I said, we moved that up to the prime spot in our biweekly ComStat meeting. There were challenges to the reorganization, and I think, I'll mention those briefly. Budgets, it's always a problem when you have to reallocate money to decentralize and move crime analysis with all their particular computer applications off-site. I had to find personnel of an already diminished personnel pool to dedicate to these problem-solving teams, the district response officers. So I had to reallocate people. That caused negotiations with some unions, but ultimately everybody saw the benefit of it and were able to make the necessary modifications. I think the communication was key between the community because they were intimately involved in this process too, along with the crime analysis unit and the officers. There were some cultural hurdles to get over, as we all know in a police organization, that's always a key component. The inclusion of civilian crime analysts into the field as equal members of a problem-solving team. That took a little time to get over. Ultimately, I think the success breeds success. So as the efforts were successful and each side, so to speak, could see the value and the importance of the other person's interaction and the kind of the genius that happens over a cup of coffee at an offsite substation when they're trying to develop a problem set and interventions. I think that ultimately kind of solved itself. Some issues with cross-shift supervision, who's in charge of who, because these officers work multiple shifts. But ultimately, I think it all came together. It was all designed to prioritize problem solving and collaboration. And again, I can't stress this enough. SPI this would not have been a successful program without the help, the guidance, the TTA, and the support of SPI to really, again, go back both to help us and also as a measure of keeping us directed in the right direction. The fourth one and the final one was in 2016, we experienced a significant opiate abuse issue. We had a terrible several years there with opiate and fentanyl overdoses in the city. In 2015, we had 579 opiate overdoses. 46 of them were fatal. Unfortunately, by 2016, those numbers skyrocketed. We had over 100 or approaching 100 fatal overdoses, and the numbers were essentially 3 to 4 a day in our community of, again, about 115,000. Those are overdoses, and ultimately the number of fatals was astronomical. So we had situations where people were dying. We had used public health data to, again, go back to that data component of the SPI program. We were able to identify that individuals that overdosed and survived were 50% more likely in short order to overdose again and have fatal consequences this time. So we had a data point that we were able to get from our public health partners in the city. We then strategized, again, that bottom-up type of thing to come up with an intervention strategy, and it was innovative, where we combined a team of people to go out and find those individuals that overdose and survive and try to do everything possible to encourage them to get into some kind of a treatment intervention so that they avoided becoming the next fatal statistic. And what we put together was the co-op program, Community Opioid Outreach Program. And it was a unique program. It combined a police, and at initially one police officer, one firefighter, which was unique. I had a very willing partner on the fire department side. The chief there was an exceptional person. He saw the need too. We needed to save people's lives. So we teamed a police officer, a firefighter. We were able to get some initial funding through a hospital program to combine a substance abuse counselor into that team. And then we a key component, we use public health. Again, we were able to get a part-time public health person to work in the team. And then as the team, got more successful and started to really go out into the community, we were able to get other people to send resources in. For example, the local ambulance provider was able to help us with people, and then it continued to grow. At the same time, we also were very cognizant of the fact that children that were witnessing these overdoses and these fatal overdoses were significantly impacted. So the district attorney came to us and proposed another program called the CARE program, which focused on intervention of children that were witnesses of these fatal overdoses to try and break that cycle of drug use that very often we see in family members. And so we developed that team, and the whole idea was to break that cycle and stop the normalization of drug abuse in generation after generation. And what we did is that particular program collaborated with Mental Health Association in the area that was available to be on call within 24 hours. They would try and reach out to juveniles that were witnessed of overdoses and get them the appropriate counseling over a long period of time that they needed to, hopefully not be impacted by what they had witnessed. We also had to work with the State Department of Children and Families. They were instrumental. So again, collaboration, data, innovation, research, all of these programs were driven by the research component, and we were, able to successfully move forward. That particular program is both the co-op and the CARE program are still in the SPI program today. And I will say I'm very proud of those two, because those were initiatives that we did that were very innovative to try and, get to people and save them before they became the next fatal overdose. I will say that in a mid-sized organization like I oversaw, we had, I think, 4 individuals, 3 sworn and 1 civilian, that lost close family members to the opiate overdoses within a couple of years. That's how significant the problem was here. So I think that was, a really good program. I'm very proud that the police department took a non-traditional law enforcement approach to that, more like a community caretaker, and we're able to move that forward. Summing up, first of all, I think everybody that's new to this program, you're very fortunate to be involved in it. I think it's going to be the catalyst for many good things moving forward for your department and for you personally. As I said, it's very much a bottom-up program. You come up with the innovation. SPI helps you all along the way. The subject matter experts and the teams that they put together and the monthly calls, I think, are the secret sauce. They help very much with your organization and help you move forward. For me personally, I think that it allowed me, the SPI programs that I have been involved with over the several years, allowed me to grow personally and professionally, as well as help the department and the community. And I know that my involvement with it benefited me greatly. So I'm a big believer. I think that it's a great program, and I welcome you to it if you're new. And I hope to see you along the way. Thank you very much.
All right. When I see Bill, I will thank him profusely for that. I wanted to say a few words to close this out, and then invite our colleague Kate McNamee to chime in for a minute or two. But as I said or intimated earlier, I think Lowell SPI and Billy Taylor truly exemplify several of our principles, if not all of them. Using the evidence base, problem solving, strategic focus, making best use of information systems, collaboration. And I think Billy and his longtime research partner, Brenda Bond, who's also an SME with us, would say that, and he did say that he benefited tremendously from the technical assistance that was available through SPI. And he's gone on, Bill has gone on to be an SME with us now, and he's become a true leader in policing issues outside of Lowell. I know that he puts his very heart into everything he does for SPI and for his profession. The thought that came to me as I was listening to that presentation is a quiet giant. You could see he's not a bombastic person, but he has a big heart and he gets really good things done. And if you encounter him, just thank him for his contributions to SPI and for what he brought to us today. Kate?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Chip. My name is Kate McNamee. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor with oversight over SPI at BJA, and my first time at least seeing most of you, or many of you. I've been able to talk to you and touch base with you on the phone, and as you've been launching your SPI initiatives. And it's truly an honor for me to work with this program. In my job, I move millions of dollars every year out of the Department of Justice to communities across the country. But the money isn't everything. You know, it's important, of course, and it can be a game changer for certain aspects of a community or an agency, but it isn't everything. And your new access to the leading experts and to each other is really the lasting benefit of your membership in this club. And I hope that, and I know that Bill Taylor's testimony really speaks to that. And I would like to encourage all of you over the next 2 days and over the next 3 years, 2 years of your projects, depending on which cohort you're in, just use us for all that we are worth. This is a great club to be in. And at the same time, I look forward to learning from all of you, where SPI should be heading. What do you need more good information on, to tackle policing's current challenges and the challenges in your communities? And I'd finally like to say that, SPI was born at the crossroads back in 2008, 2009 of a series of crises, an economic meltdown, a lack of evidence base on, what works in crime control. And now, lo and behold, we are in the middle of a series of crises again, as Acting Director Mahoney mentioned. And so SPI truly, I believe, is made for the moment that we are in right now. It was literally created for it, and it is going to be driven by your needs and driven to address a field that is experiencing extreme change and challenge at the moment. So I look forward to working with you as we all navigate that.